Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mold Pod Live, where myself and my fearless co-host, Mold Assessor, hope that you're empowered by this health information and that it has a positive impact on your life. We hope that it's a word in season for you today. So today we are going to be talking about some mold myths. It is very confusing, all the information out there about mold, and some of it is harmful to health because it's just not true. So as experts in the mold field whose primary interest is your health, we are going to go through some of this information that you may have heard today and tell you, is it true or can it be disproved by science? So whether that be testing or whether that be detox information or info about your home assessments or detox, any kind of mold information can be helpful or harmful depending on whether or not it's true. So I will go ahead and start with one mold myth while Mold Assessor is getting ready to join me. So, I just had to say something and he appeared. That's awesome. So we're going to get him in here and then I will go ahead and start up the discussion about mold myth busting. So, myth versus fact. All right, you guys. Just gonna get this set up. Perfect. All right.
Hey,
Hello.
Di.
Good morning. All right.
Hi. Sorry I'm late. I was looking for the little circle, but it didn't pop up. So I didn't see it.
No circle.
But
All right. Well,
yeah,
Instagram hasn't woken up yet, but we're awake, so that's
yes.
what counts. Happy Moldy Monday.
Happy Moldy
So,
Monday.
yeah,
Mold Myth Monday. Excited.
absolutely. Yeah. So, I was thinking, you had given me the acronym TDD a while ago and it stuck. I thought, we should work on an acronym for you as well. I don't know, TMA, the Mold Assessor. I got to work on that. So if you guys have any ideas for acronyms for Mold Assessor, then put them in the comments because
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Maybe TMI. I think
I know
sometimes
it sounds too close to TMI. So
yeah.
maybe when people see our stuff on mold, they may think it's TMI.
Well, not
But
everyone can be so fortunate to have a cool acronym, but I appreciate that.
that's hilarious. All
But
right. So every single day we run across, I think I can speak for both of us when I say that we run across information about mold that is just not true. I just wanted to kind of go through that today and a few examples that, came to mind right away. So I can kind of jump in with some from the medical side, and then we can talk about some testing myths as well, because I like that. Mold assessor dude, mad. Keep them coming, guys. A really, really common one is about testing of the body, right? So urine testing, some people say, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it because y'all have seen this, they will say, urine testing is not accurate because 25-ish% of people will not be processing out the toxins and will not be peeing out the toxins, and you're never going to see any of this on the urine. So I'm here to tell you today, having worked with many clients for mold and seen a lot of genetic tests. So what we're talking about is the MTHFR and HLA-DR tests. So I have seen many people whose HLA-DR is positive for the genes that make you less able to identify mold toxins in your body as foreign and as harmful and process them out. And they have positive urine mycotoxins tests. So, that is my evidence right there that yes, you can get mold toxins out of your body. It's just slower. Like it is much slower, but you can detoxify them, and we just have to boost up the body with supplements and supporting the immune system and trying to modulate that immune system so that we can, empower your immune system to go ahead and flag them and process them out. So, I mean, I've seen the results in front of my face that the HLA testing and, can be positive, and the urine myco can still be positive. So we just disproved
Yeah,
that one
super
right there.
fascinating. I hope everyone can hear me because there's some maintenance going on outside and I don't know how loud it is.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear the background noise as well, but it's
Okay.
okay.
I'm thinking if I grab a microphone, maybe it'll be a little better.
Yeah, that's
But
fine. I know we have a lot of jet noise here, but I don't think they started quite yet, but there's always something going
yeah.
on.
So
So,
hopefully maybe now it's let me go grab a mic
yeah.
and if you want to cover for a
Yeah,
sec, I'll
sure.
be right back. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So, okay. So, myth busted number one automatically. The next one I wanted to talk about that you guys may have seen is that you have to do a specific heavy metal detox for any of this to work. So I would say to that you usually don't, because zeolites and other binders actually work for heavy metals. So whenever you are treating mold, whenever I am using these binders and other supplements in my detox and mold colonization protocols, it actually will take care of heavy metals as well. So usually you don't have to add something specific for heavy metals. I do like that whenever I use the parasite cleanse, it has a heavy metal flush in it too, because when you are killing off parasites, which like to hang out with mold because they like to hang out in a toxic environment, then they will release heavy metals because they like to hold on to heavy metals in the body. So whenever you kill off parasites, then you do need to process out heavy metals because they will be released in that process, not the other way around, if that makes sense. So it is, that's kind of a case in which you're going to want the metal flush. But with mold, oftentimes we're multitasking. And, honestly, a lot of these herbals and a lot of these supplements have multiple purposes, so they boost up the immune system. They, they do, so many different things in the body, and it's not just like one purpose that we're using them for in many cases. Anti-inflammatory, all of that. So, all right, you back?
Yeah, I hope sorry about that. Is this
You're good.
thing pretty much on, seems like? Yeah, it should be.
Oh yeah, you're good.
These
You're
are
good.
brand new mics, brand new tripods, so I'm ready to go.
Ooh, I love
Um,
that. That is so great.
but I don't want to interrupt your heavy
No,
metal talk.
we're done. Heavy metal
Um,
rock.
yeah, so okay, so I got to catch up now. So, um, I have a lot of clients who are testing for all these things: metals, urine tests, mycotoxin, parasites, the blood testing.
Yeah.
There's so many different kinds, and I think there's a huge reliance on that, and a lot of people, are missing the bigger picture, which is work with the TDD or the detox doc or work with Mold Assessor because the results of a test are not, I say they're not always going to show you what you quote unquote want to see, or people want, to find something that's going to help them, but not every test, or there's no test that's guaranteed to show that. Um, so I say it's not about mold testing anymore. It's really about mold assessment. Whether it's for the body or the home, you really need a comprehensive assessment that kind of covers everything. But I do see like a majority of my clients are getting the mycotoxin urine test. I think it's one of the easier ones to get.
Yeah.
Um, but this is
Yeah.
why I recommend you so much because it's not just take a urine test. It's do you provoke it? Do you not provoke it? And then some people will say, well, this is the completely wrong way to do it, but it's all good information.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if I do an air test in someone's home, there's different ways of testing the air, or testing behind a wall, or taking a swab.
Yeah.
So I think it's super important you bring those myths up.
Yeah, yeah, and people, I just got this question yesterday as to like which company to use for the urine test, and I just want to briefly say that there are two different ways that the urine test is done. There is mass spectrometry. I'm actually looking at page 45 of Conquering Mold because we go over that. I never have my book like within reach for these podcasts, but
I always
that's all right.
do, but
That's all right.
today I reorganized a little.
Yeah. All right. So there's mass spec, and then there's ELISA. So ELISA is, I mean, both of them are fairly accurate, but Real Time uses ELISA, and the other two companies use the mass spec, and mass spec is slightly more accurate than ELISA, even though ELISA is faster and cheaper, and the mass spec ones test for more toxins. And the ELISA one, they give it to you like in a category in the results. Like some of those mold tests for the home too, it's very frustrating because you get it and it's like trichothecenes, and it's like, okay, it gives you 5 different toxins in the category, and you can't parse that out because it's just not like the result's not there. Like it's just a category, and you're like, okay, you have this category of toxins, so it's only semi-useful. Because if you're trying to correlate with home results or anything, for example, it's not very specific, right?
Yeah. Have you seen a lot about the diet impacting that? Because I know there is mold and mycotoxins in our diets.
Yeah.
But everyone brings it up to me, but I say, well, there's mold all over your house. Let's worry about that first. But I know there are moldy foods. We talk about coffee all the time.
Yeah, me too, because I love coffee. I actually don't have any coffee here. I have my ginger detox tea. So
Wow.
cheers,
Yeah.
but I'm not gonna drink it.
It's been one thing I can barely kick is coffee. Even the decaf has caffeine and
Mm.
mycotoxins and mold.
Well, not, I mean, the clean coffees at least don't have mold and mycotoxins. Yeah, you're right. They probably don't have zero caffeine, but I stick with my like 1 cup at, early in the morning, and then just done with it. So for the day. So yeah, that's a great myth that we can talk about, because it is a myth that only, and I think that some of the result reporting on these mycotoxin tests does not do a good job with that, because they tend to emphasize that in the result explanations too much. Like, oh, this is from grains. And I say, yes, absolutely. It's in grains, corn and coffee and, dried goods, foods that have sat around for a long time and have had a lot of chance to accumulate toxins and mold and everything else. But as we have gone over before, you eat a few times a day, right? And then you breathe, you're constantly breathing. So your exposure, especially if you're having a concentrated exposure, is going to be much more through the air. Flip side though, some people are on here saying that food, like, it's not important. The mycotoxins in food are not important, and we don't need to talk about that at all. So I have definitely heard that many times as well, which is not true either. We have to acknowledge the fact that a low toxin diet does help, and that mold and mycotoxins are in foods and can affect your body, even being taken in through food. So, it's all, not to get overwhelmed with it, or overwhelmed by it, but just to remember the choices that you're making as you go through your day, where you are, what you're breathing in, and what you're eating.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've seen, throughout our work, and you've even recommended to me, a low mold diet because of my mold exposure over the years, and it's definitely been a game changer, not just for mold, but for my health. Because if you're eating, oatmeal and cereals and bread, most of the time it's not that healthy anyway. Um, but people, I think it's a myth that you tell people to have a clean diet and a clean home, and they're like, that is so hard and impossible. That's never going to be possible. But in reality, once you do have a clean diet and a clean home, like, I think things get much easier. These toxic burdens start to leave. But if you're eating whole foods like chicken or bananas, or like, most of the time there's no room for mold and mycotoxins. Whereas coffee or something more, there's obviously some that are tested. I don't know who's doing the testing, but there's obviously more, if you have a loaf of bread, you can't really always see the mold. Sometimes it's mixed in with all the ingredients, and then when it comes out looking and smelling pretty good, it could still have moldy mycotoxins. It's not as hard as people think, I think at first maybe. Um, and that also reminds me, I know we talk a lot about binders between us, and I've even taken binders, and I think it's very helpful to pull those toxins out. But I see so many videos, and which binders are better. Do you have any advice or tips for that?
Yes, this is a huge one, extremely controversial. Because I think there are a lot of conflicting studies, even. But so the argument is that, well, the sides are of the argument are that is cholestyramine the only thing that can bind mycotoxins, like the only thing. This, medication, this prescription, the only thing that's going to bind mycotoxins. And people will say that. And then, or does, pretty much everything bind toxins and we don't really need to worry about which binder we take, because eventually it's just going to sop up everything and get it out. So I would like to argue that it's somewhere in the middle. So I have a mycotoxin binders chart in my book, because there are studies showing that binders, a variety of binders, so let's just give some examples of binders besides that prescription one. Cholestyramine and alcohol, the prescription ones. And then, so there's charcoal, which is activated carbon. There's clays, so like zeolite clay, bentonite clay, things like that. There's fulvic acid, trace minerals. There are regular probiotics and spore-based probiotics. Chlorella can be used as a binder, and there are also food-based binders. Fiber can bind toxins as well. So there are actually studies showing that how binders work. So the argument is that cholestyramine, because it has a charge opposite to many of the mycotoxins that they'll attract. And sure, our molecules like in our body interact based on charge, but that is not the only thing that matters. And the size of the mycotoxins, it is argued that the mycotoxins won't adsorb or won't go on the surface of these other binders because they're the wrong size. And that just doesn't really make sense, because the toxins travel around our bodies with other molecules either attached to them or with them. For example, bile often is seen with toxins, and those easily will adsorb to or go into the pores on the surface of these binders. It's very complex interactions that happen in our body, right? In our bodies. And, just taking a step back, would it really be true that these man-made molecules are the only way we have to get toxins out of our bodies? I would just throw that out there too. Even though I was pulling up some studies, one showing that the probiotics will adsorb to or let ochratoxin A into its surface and go ahead and attach to that and get it out of our bodies. There are other studies too showing that they actually will work for certain toxins, and it's not across the board. Like, for example, if you are dealing with, let's just take gliotoxin. So the only things that have been studied to bind to that, which is on this chart that I made, is spore-based probiotics, and acetylcysteine can actually be a binder to NAC, and then clays. So like charcoal doesn't work for that one. So, because they all have different chemical structures. So it's complex, but long story short, we have multiple ways that we can bind these toxins and get them out of the body. So
Yeah, super interesting. And, I have to look up the difference between adsorption and absorption every time. And I don't think a lot of people know there's one with AD and one with
yeah,
AB, which absorbing is like a sponge will absorb something, and adsorbing, maybe you could explain it better, but that's when things kind of stick or bind together.
yep,
Um,
yeah, it's like on the surface, but it can also come off. Like, for example, if you're constipated and you have these things recirculating, then it can easily come off because it's on trying to be on there for too long. So yeah, adsorption is where it will be kind of the best way is to think about this like classic toy, the Woolly Woolly, where it's like these little filings that you can use with a magnet. And so it's like attached, but it's not really stuck like glue. So it's on the surface and it can come off.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've heard so many people say, "Oh, you just take charcoal and that's it." But I think people forget you still kind of have to get that out. You still have there's other detox methods that your body has, but you still got to get it out. Like you said, if you're constipated, then you might not be getting that stuff out, or there's urination, there's sweating, there's going number two. There's even natural ways to get this stuff out. And I think you've said, go in the sauna. That's a good way to sweat stuff out and get the toxins stirred up. And then you can bind them. So then you stir it up, bind it, excrete it. You can't just do one thing
Yeah.
and expect to fully heal. It's a number of different things. But it kind of reminds me of the home. There's always a connection, home and body. But people will tell me, oh, HEPA air purifiers are completely useless because they don't get mycotoxins. But I tend to disagree because the way I see it, like you said, the mycotoxins can attach to the spores and the fragments and the dust. And most of the mycotoxins are probably going to be on those spores. So if we're pulling spores out of the air, we're doing a big important step of cleaning the air, but I'm sure some mycotoxins are getting removed. And then there's the chance that the mycotoxins can pass through the HEPA, and after a certain amount of time, your HEPA can become a distributor of mycotoxins or dust and dirt. Because at a certain point, if you're not changing your HEPA filters, then eventually you're just going to have a dirty machine blowing things away. But we've seen so many people who didn't know what a HEPA was, and now they're feeling infinitely better just because they have clean air.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think there's always two ways to look at it. But if you have the detox doc and the mold assessor, I don't think we've come across a case where we haven't been able to reduce exposure and help people feel better.
So true, so true. So speaking of the home, though, I wanted to ask you, mold assessor.
Yeah.
So Hermes, right? You have strong opinions, I know, about Hermes. So, and there
Yes.
are a lot of people who are being recommended to do them as the first step always. So tell us, when would that be? Like, when would you want to see an ERMI before you go and do your assessment? Or like waiting 90 days, like, oh my gosh, it's so complex.
It is complex, and it's not just ERMI. I don't necessarily have beef with ERMI. It's really any mold test. And I see a lot of questions which we will get to, but people are saying, should I be worried about mold? We should always be worried, I think, about mold. It's a decomposing fungus, but there's so many different ways of testing for mold. There's the ERMI, there's air testing, there's surface testing, there's EMA, there's ERMI Plus, there's some new dust tests coming out, which I'm really excited for. Shout out Michael Rubino, which we'll
Yeah.
talk about next week.
And yeah, we're going to be on with him on Friday.
Yeah, Mold Pod Live next week with Michael Rubino, or this week.
This week.
This week on the 7th. I don't even know what's
It's a new week.
what day it
It's
is.
cool.
But this week, March 7th, another episode. But there's so many different types of testing, and personally, I would love to see all of them in a house because the more information we get, the better. But when you say, which one would you want before I come in? Really, none of them. I don't want people taking this into their own hands. I don't want you buying a petri dish and trying to judge your safety, because people will do the test or an ERMI, and then they will usually not know how to interpret it. They'll be misled. They'll talk to a laboratory, and then they might say, you know what, I don't really need to call Mold Assessor because the ERMI was low, or there wasn't enough dust for the ERMI, so I must be fine. Or maybe I should wait 90 days for the dust from an ERMI. The answer is always no. Call a professional first. I could come into your house with zero testing, zero air samples, zero surface samples, and I could easily point out 10 common sense mold and moisture problems in every home. Like, I don't need to test it. That's just the reality is we're doing a moisture assessment and a mold assessment. Finding moisture is 100 times more important than finding mold and testing your dust and your air. Even the best testing doesn't tell you where the problem is. And I actually had a good talk with Michael the other day that the more testing we do, actually we get more info. So if we take an air sample in 10 different rooms, now we start to get a locational analysis. Or if we do an ERMI in every room, now we're starting to get an idea of what's going on. Or you could even do it in the attic or the basement. But guess what? Now you just spent
That's a lot.
$3 to $5 grand just on testing.
Yeah.
And you haven't even paid the professional his money for coming to your home. So I really think, the tricky part is finding someone who's at the top of the industry to help you in an affordable way. That's why I try to post content and do consults with people that cost less than my assessment. But I really think it's more important to bring in the right professional than, you got to order this ERMI online, you got to wait for it to show up. I've seen these huge Facebook groups filled with many people in need that are telling people wait 90 days for your dust to build up. And we've seen with Christina with Justwell put it wonderfully. One day could make a huge difference. And I am dog sitting, so
Aww.
super like unprofessional, I think, today. But
It's all good.
she's super cute. But even Christina said one day makes a difference. So if you're telling people wait 90 days for dust and dirty, moldy dust to build up in your home, it's like here's 90 days that you probably don't even want to waste just to get a test that can probably mislead you into waiting another 90 days or another year. So now you just spent half a year to a year because of some mold test. And we've seen that the labs that they put a little something on the test, like, oh, this is just a normal common mold, this is this, that. You can't rely on these labs versus the professionals who see it every day, like the Detox doc, Mold Assessor. You want someone who sees this every day and helps.
Reference.
Yes, Mold Dog, by the way, shout out Mold Dogs. That's actually another thing, I think without any testing, a lot of people should rely more on a mold dog and a mold assessor. Because if you can get that good mold assessor and a good mold dog, not necessarily just the dog's trainer, in my opinion, but you want two teams. I think you want the dog and you want the mold assessor. But those are great because a mold assessor can find something that no test can find. And a dog can find something that no mold assessor can find. So that's a great myth. And I'm glad we have Roxy here to help us bring it up.
Thanks,
I got to
Roxy.
show you her at the end.
Please.
Maybe I'll just show her in now because she's really wanting this attention.
Oh, hi.
But hey, Roxy, you're on the internet now. But
Famous.
I have a lot of people saying that mold dogs don't work, things like that, and I think a lot of that is just misinformation. Dogs do what they're trained to do, and they do it very well. They're not perfect, but secret, it's a myth. I'm not perfect either. I don't think anyone is perfect. That's a myth that we have yet to bust. But but you can't, there's so many things. And then I just had literally in my comments moments before we started, someone said, "You're not allowed to say this is mold. Actually, it's bacteria." And I'm like, I'm like, I'm like, really? Well, go ahead. And he's like, you could get sued. I'm like, you could sue me if you want. That would be a waste of time and money. But first of all, bacteria and mold are two different kingdoms. You got fungi and bacteria, or I'm probably botching that, but there's microbial organisms. There's fungus. Bacteria is not a fungus. Bacteria is not a fungus, and it never will be.
Nope.
But I've seen this so many times that I'm willing to put my career on the line or get sued by someone because they don't agree Like, go ahead and I'm testing it in a lab. Like, go ahead and disagree, but I'm sure you feel the same where people will be like, this can't be mold. And you're like, I wrote a whole book on
I
this.
literally
Like,
wrote the book on mold. What do you want?
yeah,
Um, I can say that now. So, and you literally put the photos in the book. So what?
shout
But
out.
okay, so absolutely. I love the review for my book. Beware graphic photos. 5 stars. I was like, yeah, beware those graphic photos, and you love them all day long, and so do I.
Yeah.
So, but okay, so just to make sure everybody's getting, the unbiased information from this. So, okay, bacteria and fungus often hang out together, though, right, in the home. So, yeah, like when you test it, you can say that that's mold, but sometimes they're together on even like right next to each other, because they're warring in your home and in the body. And then also, so, we're talking about that the assessment with a professional, with you, is much, better than doing a bunch of random DIY tests. But if someone's saying, well, that's so expensive, then sometimes I've heard you say too that you work with people on like, okay, how many samples am I going to take in your place? Because like you can take a whole bag full of samples, which we've seen in your content, or sometimes you can take only a few if, that's all finances allow for, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big issue because if anyone has seen how this industry can take advantage of people, I mean, I think anyone watching, and we have double digit viewers and tons of people are going to listen to the recording. But we know that the mold industry, whether it's doctors, assessors, can really take advantage of people and you can run up the check. And I am not the cheapest one on the block, but I tell people right away, you don't even need any samples. You don't need to go above and beyond. I always include samples because I want people to have some proof on paper, and I try to bring value. And you need proof because then people are just gonna say, "Oh, that's not mold, it's bacteria." Like as if bacteria is such a good thing to have. Um, but it's really, like I said, I don't need samples to go in and look in your AC and go, that is
Yep.
horrendous. And, I know what mold looks like after seeing it thousands of times in person, thousands of millions almost of more times on the internet. Um, if there's anything growing, call it whatever you want. It's not good in your home.
Yeah,
But
incubated.
the easiest way I could make money off people and really take advantage of them would be you need 20 samples, you need 30 samples. And guess what? They're not super inexpensive. That racks up the bill, but that is not the solution. Just like I think you tell people, we could probably do 100 different tests of your body. But at the end of the day, like let's get one thing, let's get some proof, and then let's get you on a major detox.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I just saw this comment too. And we love when you guys comment on our stuff. Keep doing that. Thank you. It's discussions. I mean, that's my favorite thing, on social media, is like getting in the discussions in the comments, and because we're always learning. So people say, okay, I'm trying to raise money to get tests, right? And it's like, well, the priority is always reducing your exposure if there's an active exposure, and, decreasing the amount of toxins that are going into your body and increasing the amount of toxins that are coming out of your body. So whatever you can do to do that, that's going to be your priority. Testing is great. We love information. We love tests, but we love getting that information and on paper, but it's never going to be like the top thing, for your life, right?
Yeah.
So, and someone asked the question, uh, when I asked if anyone wanted us to cover anything today about, actinos. And so, yeah, actinobacteria can come from the outdoors and can come, into your home, and then they can get into your body. Is this the primary thing that's driving your symptoms? Usually not. Actinos also like to hang out in a toxic environment in the body. So a lot of times when we get, the toxin burden down in general, then your body will be able to fight them off, and we don't have to do some intense course of antibiotics or things like that, for actinos. But sometimes can colonize the sinuses as well, so you have to do some antimicrobials there. But important, discussion, because I know that a lot of professionals are are really focusing on Actina's research, which I love to see the research, more and more research coming out. You just reported on that NIH two-pager, backing mold toxicity, which was a long time coming, but thankfully it's out now. Uh,
Yeah, it's
so,
great to see the government somewhat, aligning and posting some of this, the National Institute of Health.
yeah,
And, we see a lot of agencies that kind of go back and forth and confuse people and don't really provide a solid foundation. Like they're telling people don't do mold testing, but make sure you bring in a mold professional, which I actually agree with. But it's like people don't really understand a lot of that. Um,
yeah,
you mentioned like indoor and outdoor, and I think that's another thing I hear a lot. Like people say, well, this is an indoor mold and this is an outdoor mold, and if it's indoor, it's common and it's actually good for you. I think I'm gonna go sniff it. Um, I think that's a big misconception because there's no such thing as indoor
yeah,
mold. Like we
yeah,
live, I mean, most of the time your house is basically outdoors anyway. People don't realize, but you have a vented attic, you have holes in your ceiling. A lot of the time we're living outside and we're just fighting the elements, but our house is made of wood and it's made of things that are found in nature, and all mold started outside. There's no logic behind any of that. If you have mold in your AC unit, those spores came from outside somewhere.
yep,
If you have mold under your kitchen sink, I mean, these spores are everywhere, but we got to stop with the misconception of indoor, outdoor. And yeah, I see bacteria almost every time I do a mold test. The lab shows me if there's also bacteria,
yeah,
completely different from mold, and there's almost always bacteria, especially when there's that moisture. Like sometimes the mold is, based on the moisture, it changes all the time. Bacteria also, but I think I tend to see bacteria more when it's very moist because I think bacteria kind of needs that to really show up on the test. Mold could
mm-hmm.
be quote unquote, I'm not even gonna say, I'll say old or new, and it still shows
Mm-hmm.
up. But it doesn't
Yeah.
matter how old the mold is or how long it's been
It
there or
never
whether,
gets mold. It never
yeah,
gets mold.
whether Uncle Joe told you, well, that's dead mold, or
Oh,
don't let Uncle Joe guide your health. And I
dead
think
mold
one of
is
the
so bad.
most, yeah, bad mold, dead mold, white mold, call it what you will. There's a fungus that has decomposed your house. The moisture problem must be addressed. And we talk about it all the time. The mold and bacteria can be in your body.
Yep.
And people don't realize that. And it's, to some extent, we need that. But you want to know what's going on in your body. You want to do the testing, do the detoxing, eat right. Um, and I think we've seen like you could spend major, major, major money with the wrong doctor, the wrong mold assessor, like 3, 4, 5 mold assessors before you get to me. Or I know you work with people who have seen some of the biggest names in
Yeah.
this medical industry. And I think they're spending 5, 6 figures.
Yeah.
Like they're spending a nice salary on healing that hasn't addressed their home, hasn't detoxed them, there
Mhm.
hasn't been binders. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of tweaks that I like to make with regimens. Yeah. I mean, the gut gets missed. The gut doesn't get addressed. The nervous system doesn't get addressed. Um, Sometimes when you take a supplement for too long that's not the right one for you, your body actually starts reacting to it. So, your body can react to anything that you put in it. So it's really important to put the right things in our bodies and to kind of keep coming back to and following up and seeing is this working? Is this in the right regimen for you? So yeah, important for continuity. So
Yeah,
let's see. We have some questions.
yeah. And I
Um,
and I wanted to mention before we go, I see a lot of people anxious to learn. You talked about the pictures and how people kind of there's like a trigger warning that you almost need because there is like a mold PTSD, and I think we've seen it
yeah,
constantly online. Like when I post videos, people are like, I literally can't watch this. Like, thank you, but I can't watch it. And I think it kind of comes back to that nervous system, like which
yep,
is so important because you're not going to heal and take action if your nervous system is not letting you take action. If you're
yeah,
nervous or you're anxious or you're depressed or the PTSD, But I think people see that and their body starts to be like starting to react literally because they're seeing the mold again. And people don't understand when we say that these mold situations are bad. But when you walk in and, look at the pin video on my page, the garage is covered in mold. It looks like Picasso was in there painting one of his cubist is
Intense.
that the right word? Yeah, I mean, there's mold everywhere.
Absolutely.
It's on the clothes. It's on the
Yeah.
suitcases. I mean, and you've seen it. It grows in people's sinuses and in your gut lining.
Yeah, I still remember texting that day saying, "What is the story behind this? This is insane. This is crazy." Like that garage was literally being, I mean, mold will reclaim your house to the earth. We have people ceilings falling in because there's so much mold. Like that house will be decomposed and reclaimed to the earth if it's left long enough with mold. It will happen. So
Yeah.
mold is a survivor. It is a decomposer, and we don't say or post any of this to scare anybody, but yes, your nervous system, if you're in fight or flight, can be triggered by this stuff. But the solution to that is not to just keep in that state forevermore. It is to go ahead and, like I posted yesterday, about, being in a mold crisis. Like whenever you get, which I think we just made that term up, but I like it. It's not a good situation, but I think it's a fitting term, for any time mold puts you in fight or flight. But it's possible to get out of that. Really, like, the point of our pages, and we I think both, stay pretty positive in general as far as our like vibe on our pages, because healing is possible, right? Like that's your motto, and kind of like I steal it a lot too. So healing is possible, and you don't have to stay in this fight or flight state. You don't have to resonate with the low frequency of mold. You don't have to be in that dark mindset, that mold can put you in. So I have an encouragement, video highlight on my page if you guys, want to go save all those videos so that you can have them whenever you need encouragement.
Yeah. I think it's hard to stay positive and to trust people in this industry where you've had four mold assessors already. You've had four doctors who specialize in mold, or some of them aren't even doctors, guys. Just so you know, some of your doctors are not even medical doctors. The detox doc is. But I tell people at a certain point, you have to trust someone, or you have to go to med school and learn all the knowledge yourself, or at a certain point you're going to have to trust someone to heal, and you do want to take fast action. It's like you said, fight or flight is there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Your body's telling you fight or flight, like either leave or fix the mold.
Yeah.
People see fight or flight and they're like, oh, let me just
Or
go drink a
freeze.
beer, and then it doesn't really, it's counterproductive.
Yeah, because you
um
can freeze too. That's another state that your nervous system
Yeah,
can be in
but
at any
your
point.
body doesn't want you to. Your body says either fight or flight. So there's no freeze in there. And I tell people fast action, take fast action, because people get analysis paralysis. Like you said, that's
Yeah.
freezing up. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
should I get an ERMI? Should I do an air test? Should I do a urine test? Should I do a blood test? I'm just gonna give up.
Don't
That's never
give
the
up.
answer here. Um,
Yeah, don't give up. Contact us, and we can see, like, evaluate what is the best step for you. Molding classrooms is a huge issue. Absolutely. This is very, concerning and super super common. You can be exposed any indoor environment, right? In your car, in anywhere. So air purifiers, in every room. It depends. I mean, you're the expert on that. I'm not even gonna try.
Yes. So, Emski, hopefully you're here. If not, the recording will be posted on podcast platforms, etc. I recommend having an air purifier in every room. Some people will say this is overkill, and I say that's fine. Let's do overkill. Obviously, not overkill like have 20 in every room, but it depends on the size of your home. But let's have clean air in our home. Unless you can convince me, really like prove to me that your air is clean, I want to see a HEPA air purifier in every room. It doesn't hurt you to get cleaner air. It really doesn't. Do I recommend plants for purifying the air? Not necessarily. There are some options that I think are better than others. You know, some plants are air plants, and some can grow directly out of water. Some of which are, I'm forgetting the name, but you know, they're the beautiful long vines that can just grow in the water.
Mm.
Um, Someone put that in the comments. But if you have a plant with soil, which you water the soil, you're setting yourself up for a mold problem, because don't forget, mold, bacteria, fungus, the nitrogen cycle in plants, this all happens in moist soil where the plant, correct me if I'm wrong, needs bacteria to get the nitrogen. So you're creating like a petri dish in these plants in your home. I don't recommend plants. I recommend HEPA air purifiers. Not really a brand, not really some fancy machine, but just HEPA. Or even like you'll see on my page, there's just a box fan with an air filter taped onto the back. Maybe you can't afford a HEPA in every room. Some of them get expensive. But you always want to increase your filtration of your air, and definitely dehumidifiers.
Yeah.
D, with the emphasis on the
Yeah.
D, not a regular
Not
humidifier, but a
humidifier.
dehumidifier.
Yep.
Super important because that reduces the moisture, which
Yep.
leads to mold. If you don't have moisture, guess what? There won't be mold. That's why we get mold in our bodies, because there's that right moisture condition,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
we can't dry out our body, you know.
Yeah. 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 So true. Yeah. I think the plant thing is interesting. Like, I do have a minimal amount of how like indoor air plants, but I make sure to put them in like a well ventilated area that's, dehumidified and stuff. And it's like you have to have them under the right conditions or they will become mold factories for you. So yeah,
Definitely,
and
a low moisture plant would be good, because if you're going to dehumidify, you know, it's probably going to end up dry. But you know, there's succulents or cacti,
mhm,
or, but it's not it's not an air purifier. You know, there's some level of cleanliness, I think, that comes from it, but there's also some cons. There's always pros and cons.
true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Yeah. I mean, I think some of those machines to break down mycotoxins can be useful, right? But um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And I've
all.
definitely seen that.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of people get benefits, but it's not enough just to filter the air, or just to break down the mycotoxins,
Yep.
or just to dehumidify, or just to take binders, or just to do a urine test. It's never enough. We have to address the source
Yep.
of the problem. Um, and by the way, guys, don't eat moldy blueberries on purpose to try and get superpowers. Let's just
Oh
put
yeah.
that out there. If you're eating
Yeah.
moldy food, maybe you got to change that. If you're breathing moldy air, you got to change that. It's not
Yeah.
just one thing, but
Yeah.
mold
Those.
assessor dude, mold assessor dude is a great. That's actually my cousin's initials, MAD. So I don't know if I can steal his
Oh, that's
initials.
so
Um,
funny. But you're like never mad also.
I'm never
So
mad. Well, neither's my cousin, and I call him Mad all the
mm,
time. But
this is so well, we're gonna have to
yeah,
keep working on this. Keep
maybe
putting
more like Mad TV. Shout out Mad TV if anyone remembers that.
That's
Um,
hilarious. Oh
but
my
I
gosh.
got a great question from Emmy. Do I test myself often, or do I just eat clean? I work with the detox doc to make sure that I am detoxed. It's never just a matter of eating clean. Eating clean is not enough to make you completely healthy. Now, I think there's different terms for eating clean. If you really got a diet where you really got like 99.9% of everything you need, I think that's super, super helpful. But you do have to test your body. You do have to understand your exposure. You know, people like, including myself. I mean, there's mold here. There's no place that really doesn't have mold. You got to get the HEPA filters. You got to get the dehumidifiers. So there's always steps you can take, and I definitely do, because I see this every day, and I have to keep myself healthy so I can keep others healthy, keep doing what I'm doing. And I tell a lot of people that are my clients, they're like, well, I got to help my kids and my family, and I totally get that. But you must put your own oxygen mask on first on the airplane. You have to take care of yourself, or else how are you going to continue
Yeah.
doing what you love, which is, you know, taking care of your family, or um, your work. or whatever it is.
Yeah, and definitely the low toxin diet for sure helps just making those choices, right? Like I said before, it's like a collection of choices you make every day. And just to the extent that you can shift those to that lower toxin mindset and those lower toxin choices, they do help. But yeah, I mean, it's not just one part of it. It has to be holistic, whatever term you want to use for your regimen or your lifestyle. So, and then the part of that question, do you test yourself often? So I don't usually test super often because a lot of times, like as far as a urine test goes, a lot of times, if we're trying to get a bunch of toxins out in that and you test, then the toxins will be transiently higher in your urine because you're peeing them out, right? So if you're doing an active detox, then you may want to wait a little bit to see, okay, how effective has this been? But like in the moment, you're going to be flushing out a lot of toxins. So you're potentially going to get discouraged, by that result, and it would largely be a waste of money. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've said so many times, like, trust the symptoms, trust the gut. If
Yep.
you're still feeling sick, there's always more detoxing that you could probably do, but a lot of the time, what I see is there's still mold in your home. And I think we've seen, no matter, even if you work with the best doctor in the game, who's right above me right here, TDD, it doesn't mean you're going to heal if you're sitting in a garage that's covered in mold and you're sleeping in the garage. There's only so much your body can do. If I say, if it's under attack, or
Yep.
it's under a siege by mold, there's only so much you can do. You've got to address the environment. Um, so yeah, I
So
think we
true.
both keep an eye on our own health, and it doesn't matter if it's in your home or in your classroom or in your car or in your gym that you go to. Mold is mold. Exposure is exposure. Everything we're saying doesn't just apply to a home. A lot of times we see that people do better sleeping in a tent in a outside or in the desert, because even though there's mold outside, a lot of time it's much worse inside. People say, "Oh, I think the EPA was it," or I don't want to shout out the wrong agency, but oh, the indoor air is 3 times worse than the outdoor air. Well, if I see a million spores in your indoor air, that's a lot of zeros more
Yeah,
times.
it's not
That's a
just the
thousand times worse. It really depends on the environment. Um,
Yeah.
this,
And I mean, you can
yeah.
limit molds like indoors, right? Like we're not saying everybody go live in tents, but
No,
but
no, and that's,
sometimes,
yeah, it's a more extreme case. I'm not saying everyone
yeah.
should, and a lot of people will not react that well to it.
Right.
I think better than a tent is being in a clean indoor environment with the
Yeah.
air filters and the dehumidifiers. But some people, like, I mean, time is usually of the essence, and budget is a thing, and it's just so stressful sometimes to like be house hunting in these markets, and a lot of
Yep.
people end up getting an RV in front of their house and just sleeping
Yep.
in the RV. I mean,
I
there's
have definitely seen that many times.
there's
Yeah, it's so sad how prevalent this is and how um yeah, just the whole, all of the things involved with it. But I think just circling back, because we only have a few minutes, seeing if we want to do any other questions.
yeah,
Uh,
I see a few I could just shoot off, and I think we get cut off. What is it, at an hour?
we
Or
do, yeah.
this will be recorded, posted. There's going to be another live Friday. We do this all the time. Make sure to follow the Detox Doc and Mold Assessor. But here's a great question: do we have to throw everything away? This is one of those "it depends" questions. Like, do we have to throw away all the clothes? Do we have to gut the entire house? Not necessarily, but it depends on your sensitivity. I say talk to a doctor like the Detox Doc. But when you say mold stains, if you have mold growing on your clothes, you can clean your clothes, but it's sometimes not good to take that risk. It can be very difficult to get all those mycotoxins out. Um, and I'd say, if you're on the safe side of things, okay, we know, Rox. If you're on the safe side of things, you want to consider getting rid of more things, because that's what the safe side means. It's, let's not take a risk with our health. I think you can clean clothing easier than you can clean a sofa or a
Yes, mattress.
mattress or a
Yeah,
pillow.
pillow.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and you're every day sleeping on a mattress. There's sweat, there's moisture, there's
Yep.
you know, I can't test and cut open your mattress in half, but there's some things that you have to just say, okay, you know what? I want to feel better. Maybe I'll get a new mattress.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, those things are like the first things to go in my opinion. But yeah, clothes, I like the triple wash and put them outside in the sunlight and then test them, see if you react to them. And if you're not reacting to them, personally, I didn't have to throw everything away when I moved from a moldy place years ago because we didn't even know it was mold that was affecting us. And then by the time we did, we were like, well, we still have a bunch of stuff from there. Like, what even was from there? I don't even know. So we just got rid of some stuff, and then we're like, okay, well, we feel better after all the stuff that we did. So I didn't get rid of everything, but some people have to. So
Yeah, and I see people storing stuff from their first moldy house in the moldy attic of their second moldy house. It's like you guys
toxic
are not
emissions.
exactly. If you wouldn't eat dinner in your attic, don't store stuff in your
Yeah.
attic. I'm just gonna say that. But here's a good comment about how petri dishes that the leasing office gaslit you and said they're not accurate. Well, that's why you need to hire a professional because most of these mold tests will not hold up in court. If I have to go to court for you, they're going to subpoena me. They're going to deposition me. They're going to make me speak about what I found. They're not going to, these lab results are just from a lab, but Petri dish could be great. It could show you some crazy stuff in your house, but it doesn't mean it's going to get you to the next step, which is healing. Um, and we've
Yep.
seen every symptom in the book. I see trauma, tremors,
Yep.
seizures. We've seen brain to body. That's the doctor's department, but um, any
Yep.
symptom you guys could name, mold is always a concern. Bacteria is always a concern. You want to make sure you know how much is it, and how
Yeah.
much you're exposed to.
Yep. Any unexplained medical symptom, consider mold and mycotoxins, endotoxins, bacteria, toxins, right?
Yeah.
So
And just a
toxin
couple
illness.
more moments until we're cut off. But should I throw away my plants? Maybe you want to consider that. If you had a moldy place and now you have moist soil and you could have mold in the soil. Real quick story about the hospital that had 6 to 10 patients. I think they passed away. They were unalived by the mold in the plants
It's
in the
so
hospital.
terrible.
And I was in a hospital not long ago, and everyone's joking around. Oh, you should look for mold. Well, it wasn't so funny when I looked in the ducts and there was mold, and it just really grinds my gears, if you will, that
Yeah.
our families could be sitting in a hospital that have mold blowing on them. But that is Florida for you. I mean, good luck. I mean, it's not easy. I tell people Florida is not easy. Um, and I'm
Yeah.
just reading more
Yeah,
comments.
you guys,
Trouble
if
sleeping.
you can put the comments in or put your questions in the comments of this or any of our videos, and we'll address them or message us. But if you're willing for everybody to learn from your question, then please put it in the comments of our videos.
Yeah.
And
And maybe one
great discussion.
more. I don't
Thanks for
know if
joining. Yeah.
always a great discussion. There's a great question here. Can we open our windows to solve all of our problems? Not necessarily. Somewhere like Florida, where you're letting humidity in, can be feeding the problem, but fresh air is usually a good thing.
Ventilation.
But if you're letting fresh air into your house, you're not necessarily breathing in fresh air. You're breathing in a mixture.
Yeah.
So if you want fresh air, go outside. And if it's very moldy inside, open the windows and blow that stuff out. But
Yeah.
it's not a permanent solution. But it is
Yeah.
10 o'clock, so I think we're going to get cut off somehow. But always a great talk. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Dr.
Thanks
Guy.
everybody for joining. All right. Talk to you guys soon.
Bye, everyone.